I came home early from a work trip to surprise my husband. Instead, I found rose petals on the floor, leading to our bedroom. My heart raced. I opened the door and saw him, with my cousin. They gasped. I smiled coldly and said, "Don't stop on my account. You'll need the practice for what's coming next." I never thought I'd be the one sharing my story here, but life has a way of throwing unexpected punches. I'm a 38-year-old woman, and until recently, I believed I had a solid marriage with my husband, Daniel, who's 40. We've been together for 15 years, married for 12, and have built a life in our cozy home in Boston. I work in marketing, which occasionally requires travel, while Daniel is a software engineer with a flexible schedule. Last month, I had a work trip scheduled to Chicago. It was supposed to be a week-long conference, but things wrapped up earlier than expected. Excited to surprise Daniel, I booked an earlier flight home without telling him. I imagined his face lighting up when he saw me walk through the door unexpectedly. We'd always enjoyed little surprises like this. They kept the spark alive. I arrived home around 6 p.m. on a Thursday. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over our quiet neighborhood. As I approached our house, I noticed Daniel's car in the driveway, which was expected since he often worked from home. I quietly unlocked the front door, intending to catch him off guard. Stepping inside, I was immediately struck by the soft aroma of lavender and vanilla scents from the candles we often lit during our date nights. The living room was tidy, and everything seemed normal until I noticed a trail of rose petals leading from the front door, through the living room, and up the stairs to our bedroom. My heart began to race. At first, I thought perhaps Daniel had planned a romantic evening for my return, but he didn't know I was coming home early. Confused and curious, I followed the trail. As I ascended the stairs, the faint sound of music became audible. It was our favorite playlist, the one we played during intimate moments. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and the flickering glow of candlelight spilled into the hallway. I could hear muffled laughter and whispers. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open. There, on our bed, was Daniel, shirtless, with my cousin, Olivia. They were tangled together, their faces frozen in shock as they turned to face me. Time seemed to stand still. The room was thick with the scent of candles and betrayal. Olivia clutched the sheets to her chest, her face turning pale. Daniel's mouth opened as if to speak, but no words came out. A surge of emotions crashed over me, anger, sadness, disbelief. But amidst the turmoil, a strange calmness settled within me. I stepped further into the room, meeting their panicked gazes. "Don't stop on my account," I said coldly. "You'll need the practice for what's coming next." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out, my mind racing. I grabbed my suitcase, which I hadn't even unpacked, and left the house. I drove to a nearby hotel, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. The next few days were a blur. Daniel called and texted incessantly, leaving voicemails filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. I couldn't bring myself to listen to them. Olivia also reached out, but I blocked her number immediately. The betrayal cut deep, not only from my husband, but from a family member I had trusted. I confided in my best friend, Rachel, who was furious on my behalf. She offered me a place to stay, but I needed space to process everything. I took a leave of absence from work and spent days walking aimlessly through the city, trying to make sense of it all. Eventually, I sought legal counsel. Massachusetts allows for both fault and no-fault divorces, and adultery is considered grounds for a fault-based divorce. With the evidence I had, the proceedings would likely favor me. I decided to file for divorce, unable to see a path forward with Daniel after such a profound betrayal. The process was emotionally draining. Daniel attempted to contest, claiming it was a one-time mistake, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Friends and family were divided, some urging reconciliation, others supporting my decision to leave. I knew in my heart that trust, once shattered, is nearly impossible to rebuild. Months passed, and the divorce was finalized. I sold our house, unable to bear the memories it held, and moved into a small apartment overlooking the Charles River. The change of scenery was therapeutic, offering a fresh start. I focused on my career, took up painting, a hobby I'd abandoned years ago, and began to rediscover myself. One evening, while walking along the river, I ran into an old acquaintance, Mark. We'd known each other in college but had lost touch over the years. We grabbed coffee and reminisced about old times. There was an ease to our conversation, a comfort I hadn't felt in a long time. As weeks turned into months, Mark and I grew closer. He knew about my recent divorce and was patient, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. His presence was a reminder that life moves forward, even after heartbreak. Reflecting on everything, I realized that while the pain of betrayal was immense, it also led me to a journey of self-discovery. I learned the importance of self-worth, the strength of resilience, and the value of genuine connections. Things were finally starting to feel normal again. Or at least, a new version of normal. My apartment in Cambridge had become a quiet, healing space. I'd see Mark a few times a week, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just to walk and talk along the river. He never pushed, which made it easier for me to let him in. He made me laugh again. I started to believe maybe good things were still possible. But just when I thought the worst was behind me, something else hit me in the gut, hard. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk, going through emails, sipping on cold coffee, when my phone buzzed. A message popped up from an unknown number. You don't know the whole story. Meet me. Coffee house on Tremont. 6 p.m. At first, I thought it might be spam. But something about it felt different. Real. Chilling. I stared at it for a long time. My gut twisted. Against my better judgment, I went. The coffee house was a familiar spot Daniel and I had been there many times. It was almost empty when I walked in. I ordered a tea and sat near the window. A few minutes later, a woman approached my table. Maybe mid-30s. Blonde, sharp features, a trench coat pulled tight around her. You're Anna, right? She asked. I nodded slowly. I'm Melissa, she said, sitting down across from me without waiting for permission. I used to work with Daniel. We were friends, more than that, at one point. My stomach dropped. I know about Olivia, she continued, but she wasn't the only one. Not by a long shot. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear her. She pulled a small envelope from her bag and slid it across the table. Inside were printed screenshots, texts, emails, photos. Different women. Different times. Over the course of years. I thought you should know, she said. I was in love with him too. I thought I was special. Turns out, none of us were. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. After she left, I sat there staring at the evidence, my hands shaking. It wasn't just a one-time thing with Olivia. It wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. A secret life. I went home and didn't sleep that night. I kept looking at the photos, reading the texts, trying to match timelines in my head. Vacations we took, was he with someone else the week before? All those nights he worked late, the business trips, it was all fake. All of it. I thought I had already grieved the end of my marriage. But this was a different kind of pain. It made everything worse. I felt stupid, blindsided, used. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Do we have room to reopen anything? I asked. She said we could pursue damages, maybe even drag it into court again, but it would be expensive and exhausting. I hung up, unsure what I even wanted anymore. I thought I could put the past behind me, but the past wasn't done with me. Then came the next blow. One night, Mark showed up to dinner at my place. He looked pale, anxious. There's something I need to tell you, he said, standing in my kitchen with his hands shaking. My chest tightened. He sat down at the counter. I didn't know how to say this earlier. I didn't even know if I should. But I used to work at the same company as Daniel. Years ago. We weren't close, but I knew him. I blinked. You never told me that. I didn't think it mattered, he said quickly. Until I started remembering things. Conversations. Rumors. Then when we ran into each other, I realized who you were. I should have told you earlier, but I liked you. I didn't want to lose that. My mouth went dry. So what are you saying? He hesitated. I think there's more to Daniel than even Melissa knows. I think he was doing things at work. Bad things. Money things. I stared at him, not even breathing. Are you saying he was stealing? Mark nodded. And if that's true, you might be pulled into it. If any of that money ever touched your accounts, even by accident, I backed away, suddenly nauseous. I signed things. Loans. Joint accounts. I didn't ask questions. Mark stood, reaching out. I'll help you. I know someone who can look into it. Quietly. I wanted to scream. I had just started to put myself back together. Now everything felt like it was breaking all over again, but deeper this time. Not just betrayal. Not just lies. Possible legal trouble. My name, my money, my peace. I didn't hear from Melissa again, but the folder of evidence she gave me wouldn't leave me alone. I kept going back to it, rereading the texts, comparing dates. I started noticing patterns. Like clockwork, Daniel had entire months where he rotated between different women. Some of them overlapped with our anniversary, with birthdays, with weekends we were supposed to spend together. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It felt pathological. Like I had been married to someone I didn't even know. Mark kept his promise. He put me in contact with a private forensic accountant named Lydia, quiet, sharp, no nonsense. I gave her access to everything, old tax returns, bank statements, emails. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. Just nodded and said, I'll let you know what I find. Meanwhile, I started getting strange phone calls. Unknown numbers, no voicemails. Then one day, a man showed up at my building. Tall, thin, gray suit. He said he was from a private investigation firm, hired to follow up on a matter involving Daniel. He flashed a badge but didn't leave a card. He asked if I knew where Daniel was. That's when it hit me. I didn't. We had gone no contact after the divorce. I assumed he was still in Boston, but maybe not. I called his old number, disconnected. I emailed him, bounce back. His social media? Deleted. Daniel had vanished. I called Melissa. It went straight to voicemail. Something felt off. Lydia finally got back to me. We met in a quiet corner of a library near MIT. I went through everything, she said, handing me a stack of documents. There were consistent withdrawals and transfers to unregistered accounts. Offshore. It's complex, but it's definitely fraud. And if your name was on anything jointly held, there's a chance it could be traced back to you. I felt the room tilt. She hesitated. There's something else. She handed me another envelope. Inside were photocopies of IDs. Fake ones. Passports, different names, but all of them with Daniel's face. In one, he was Stephen Reed's. In another, Marcelo Costa. He's been planning this for a long time, she said quietly. This wasn't just a guy cheating on his wife. He's been laundering money, probably stealing from his company or clients, and using his relationships as cover. My entire body went cold. I was married to a con man. Mark didn't say, I told you so. He just stayed close, helping where he could. But I saw the tension in his eyes. I was starting to wonder, how much did he really know? One night, I asked him directly, did you ever suspect him when you worked there? Mark looked torn. I heard rumors. Weird things with accounts. One of our coworkers disappeared suddenly. HR covered it up. But I never thought it would go this far. I wasn't sure if I believed him. Then came the subpoena. A thick envelope, hand-delivered to my door. I was being summoned to testify in a federal investigation. Not just about Daniel's personal life, but about possible financial crimes. They were calling it a wide-reaching fraud and identity theft case involving multiple parties. My name was in the files. As a witness, for now. Everything spiraled fast. Reporters showed up outside my building. My company placed me on leave until the matter was resolved. Friends pulled away, some out of awkwardness, others because they thought I had to be involved. I was drowning in paperwork, legal threats, frozen accounts. And then one night, I got another message. A burner email. No name. Just this. He's watching. Don't trust Mark. I froze. The email had an IP trace from out of state, somewhere in Oregon. I didn't know anyone in Oregon. Was Daniel hiding there? Or was it one of his other aliases? But the last sentence haunted me. Don't trust Mark. Suddenly, little things clicked. Mark showing up when he did. The way he always steered conversations. His insistence on helping me quietly. The fact that he once worked for the same company. What if he wasn't just an old friend? What if I was still in the middle of something being used all over again? I didn't sleep for days after the email. Don't trust Mark. It echoed every time I closed my eyes. I'd stare at the ceiling and retrace every conversation we'd had, every moment that once felt comforting but now felt calculated. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe not. After everything with Daniel, I didn't know who to trust anymore, not even myself. Still, I needed answers. I invited Mark over that Friday night. I didn't let on that anything was wrong. I made dinner. I smiled. I played the part of someone still leaning on him for strength. He showed up like always, carrying a bottle of wine, smiling easy. When we sat down to eat, I dropped the question mid-bite. Why did someone tell me not to trust you? He froze. Fork halfway to his mouth. I watched his eyes. They didn't show surprise. They showed calculation. Fast thinking. Who said that? I don't know, I lied. It was anonymous. He set his fork down carefully. That's probably someone trying to stir shit. You know how people are when there's drama, they feed off it. But they knew you worked with Daniel. They knew things. He looked at me then. Something in him hardened. I wasn't going to say anything, he said. But since we're here, I lied to you. Silence. I didn't just work with Daniel, he continued. I was the one who flagged his activity. Quietly. Internally. I suspected him years ago. I reported him anonymously to our compliance team. Nothing came of it. He had friends higher up. People who buried things. I left the company before it blew up. I thought it was behind me. I felt my stomach drop. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? He looked down. Because I knew you'd think I had an angle. That I was just another person trying to dig through your life. I didn't want to be that. I stared at him, barely holding it together. So you knew what he was. And you still let me find out from a stranger. Mark's voice raised for the first time. I tried to tell you. You didn't want to hear it. You were still trying to believe your life hadn't been a lie. My hands were shaking. You should have told me the whole truth. From the beginning. That you were the one who reported him. That you saw it firsthand. That he was being watched long before he disappeared. Mark's face twisted. And would you have believed me then? Or would you have kicked me out too? I stood. I don't know. But I deserved the truth. All of it. That's when it all exploded. Mark slammed his hand on the table, the wine glasses rattling. You want to know why I didn't tell you sooner? Because I was scared, Anna. Scared of being dragged back into the mess. Scared of getting too close to someone who was still living in it. I lost friends over that job. I got threats. I changed cities to get away from it all. His voice cracked. But I couldn't stay away from you. I stared at him. Tears brimmed, but I held them back. You don't get to play the victim here, I whispered. You chose to lie. Just like Daniel. The silence that followed was deafening. Mark grabbed his coat. You want me gone? Fine. But don't pretend like you didn't need me. You weren't surviving this alone. And with that, he left. The door shut behind him like a final note. The aftermath was quiet. Painfully so. I didn't hear from Mark again. I didn't reach out either. I deleted the burner email, forwarded the documents to my lawyer, and told Lydia everything. I kept my head down during the federal testimony, said what I knew, didn't pretend I knew more. Melissa resurfaced weeks later. She sent a short message. He's been seen in Mexico under a different name. Interpol is involved now. That was the last update I got about Daniel. I lost my job. Too much press. Too much drama. My company said it wasn't a good fit anymore. I didn't fight it. I needed to breathe. Rachel, my best friend, stepped in more. She dragged me out of the apartment. Made me walk. Talk. Yell. Cry. You were collateral damage, she said one day. That's what happens when people hide poison in love. There was truth in that. It's been a year now. I've moved again, smaller city, quieter life. I teach marketing part-time at a community college. I paint on the weekends. I adopted an old golden retriever from a rescue shelter named Lou. He snores when he sleeps and follows me room to room. I never saw Mark again. I sometimes wonder if he thinks of me, if he regrets it. As for Daniel, the last I heard, he was still on the run. But I don't look him up anymore. Because I don't care. Not in a bitter, angry way, but in the kind of way that says, that chapter is closed. No part of me misses the lies, the knots in my chest, the guessing games. I don't know what comes next. I'm not rushing to find out. What I do know is this: I survived it. The betrayal, the lies, the shame, the storm, and I'm still here. Not whole, but healing, and maybe that's enough.